The voice of Patrick Stewart, Professor Xavier, was shown in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness' trailer. So with this movie coming out, and speaking about timelines and multiple universes, what better yet than to talk about the most frustrating timeline of all, the X-Men franchise. If you're curious to see these movies within their actual theatrical release date, pause the video right here and see these movies within this exact order. And personally, I believe that would be the best way for you to go ahead and watch these movies and understand what the heck is going on and why people are upset about the timelines and all the continuity errors. And if you're new here and you'd like to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video because it lets me know that you like content like this and I can be able to create more within the near future. It's time for us to go ahead and talk about how we can be able to watch all of the X-Men movies in chronological order the best way possible. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be any plot holes because I'm going to go ahead and address them as well, but in my eyes, this is probably the best way to watch this specific universe within chronological order. The first two movies to go ahead and watch are X-Men First Class and X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's pretty much these two movies' fault for creating continuity errors, but if you do want to start at the beginning, these two are the movies that you need to start with. First Class is the beginning formation of the X-Men and how they were created, giving insight to all of the characters that were from the beginning and how they split ways and where it led to them within the X-Men trilogy. And X-Men Origins Wolverine tells the story about Wolverine and where he came from, and then after that it would lead into how he got involved with the X-Men crew. After the first two X-Men movies, you could be able to watch the X-Men trilogy, the first X-Men movie, X2, and X-Men The Last Stand. Now let's just go ahead and address the continuity issues, even though this specific timeline is important according to the dates and years of where these movies are supposed to be set in. Professor Xavier and Mystique are supposed to have a very close relationship when they were kids and even all the way up to when they were adults. But if you look at Mystique's personality in the X-Men trilogy, she acts like that she really doesn't care about Charles Xavier or anybody else that's a part of the X-Men crew. Even her relationship with Magneto is a little different in the past than it is within the original trilogy as well. There's more of a sexual relationship with empathy and not more of a companion duo who only work together because they have the same ideology, but also mix it up with a little bit of fun. Second, the relationship between Magneto and Eric and how they actually become enemies of each other, that's got a certain plot hole as well, because if you watch X-Men 3, The Last Stand, there's a moment where the older Professor Xavier and Magneto are actually coming together as friends, and Xavier is walking, trying to gather up his students to be a part of his school. But in First Class, Xavier didn't have his school yet, and they decided to become enemies before he decided to start an entire educational system. Third, in X-Men Origins Wolverine, Wolverine and Sabretooth were both brothers while signing up for the army and going into various types of wars. Both of them became enemies at the end, but right after Origins Wolverine, if you decided to watch the first X-Men film, Sabretooth is there again looking entirely different, and they both act like that they have no idea who the other person is. We understand why Wolverine would forget Sabretooth because in the end of Origins Wolverine, he forgets his memory, but for Sabretooth, did he lose his memory? We honestly don't know. Finally, in the very first X-Men movie where Logan and Xavier first met each other, Xavier promised to help Logan to see if he could be able to regain his memories and to help him remember who he is, what he's like, and where did he come from. Well, the problem with that is that at the very end of X-Men Origins Wolverine, when Wolverine pretty much stated the last thing that he remembered and how he got out of it, Professor Xavier was at the exact same place with all of the students that he was able to recruit for his school system. This is gonna take a while. The next two movies you should definitely watch is Wolverine's solo movie, The Wolverine, and after that, X-Men Days of Future Past. Given the events that happen at the very end of X-Men The Last Stand, it makes sense because of all the weight that has happened when watching the whole movie of The Wolverine. And at the end of The Wolverine, even though we can't necessarily give you an explanation of how that's possible, when looking at Professor Xavier and Magneto and these two working together, it leads over towards the next film, which is X-Men Days of Future Past. The only question that I have so far, according to the movies that we've talked about already, since Charles Xavier is having a meltdown and is giving up on hope, thinking that life is terrible and he doesn't necessarily want to be Professor Xavier anymore, and what motivated him to go back into his ambition were those same characters that were at least from the past. If this entire thing didn't necessarily happen to begin with, and this timeline is probably a different timeline compared to the timeline that we're on right now, what was it that motivated this Charles to actually get out of that struggle to begin with if it wasn't that Professor Xavier? I think this might be a little bit of a paradox question. Is that Is that the correct term for it? I don't know. It's still something that gets me curious all the time. Now, this is something that we need to keep in mind. With Days of Future Past, what they did in the end is that they decided to change the events that happened in the past so that everything that happened within the previous X-Men films never really happened at all. So all of the movies that have happened within the future, that's supposed to be a whole different timeline that's going on their own adventure. So after X-Men Days of Future Past, the next movies that you should be able to watch are X-Men Apocalypse and then X-Men Dark Phoenix. Now again, even though this is the best way to watch them within this kind of order and how you're supposed to get the best kind of character growth with these characters the way you're supposed to watch them, nonetheless, we still have some more continuity errors that still don't make sense and don't add up. Okay, number one. The post-credit scenes that are in X-Men Days of Future Past show a teenage boy, Apocalypse, who is supposed to be a prophet that tries to end the world and create a whole new one. But to be honest, not many years go by as Professor Xavier tries to restore his entire school system and bring in more people to gather up and create a crew called the X-Men. And when in the setting of X-Men Apocalypse, the supposed teenage boy turns out to be a very old man, and within age, it still doesn't make sense how he's supposed to grow up that old. Second, at the end of X-Men Days of Future Past, Wolverine is supposed to be left with Mystique because it revealed that it was Mystique in disguise as Stryker. But apparently in X-Men Apocalypse, Mystique never really did anything with Wolverine, and Stryker actually did end up with Wolverine. Third, in X-Men Apocalypse, it shows how Storm actually got to be a part of the X-Men crew. If this pretty much shows her motivation within this timeline, how did she get a part of the X-Men crew differently? Does she have different ambitions and different motivations? Fourth, Jean Grey and her powers with Dark Phoenix. This one doesn't make sense to me because at least with how Jean Grey is Dark Phoenix in the original X-Men trilogy, there were hints and details about how it set her off, and there were at least explanations of what happened within the past. But with this one, Dark Phoenix tries to give it an explanation and makes it even more confusing, which we'll get to that in a minute, but it doesn't seem like that there is anything else that set it off within X-Men Apocalypse. Her powers just decided to be chaotic because Apocalypse was reborn. But apparently, that's not the first time that her powers got this out of whack. Hank McCoy and Charles Xavier explained that she'd been having bad dreams that caused her powers to go crazy within the past. We have another scene where Professor Xavier is talking to Jean Grey as a little girl. This past event is supposed to happen before Days of Future Past even occurred. So we have two moments where Professor Xavier is talking to the same Jean Grey as a little girl, but with different scenarios. 6. X-Men Dark Phoenix decided to show that all of the powers that Jean Grey has been having in X-Men Apocalypse are actually not that, but they're pretty much some other type of entity that happened in space. But if that explains all of the weird powers that she's been able to have within herself, what was all of that within Apocalypse? Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out the last two movies that you could be able to watch within this X-Men universe, and that would be the New Mutants and then finally Logan. Now, the reason why I put the New Mutants here before Logan is because there is a reveal within the plot of why these students in here and what they're for, and it ties into some of the plot of what happens inside of Logan. But in order for Logan to have happened, this movie needed to come in first because the corporation that's a part of this entire plot, it shut down in Logan, but is still alive, and it's still trying to continue and run in this one. Plus, spoiler alert, some people think that the X-Men characters are still alive in the New Mutants, while in Logan, they were claimed to be dead. It doesn't really establish the gap within the years of how long these movies are split apart, but all of these details definitely tell me that the New Mutants should happen before Logan does. These two movies are set up within the distant future, that way they're set away from the other X-Men movies and are trying to get as less continuity errors as much as they possibly can, but they still have ended up with a problem themselves as well. And the biggest way you're able to spot that problem is due to a foundation that was shown at the post-credit scene with X-Men Apocalypse, Excess Corporation. And this entire corporation deals with both the New Mutants and Logan. The problem here is that if you're deciding to put the Excess Corporation here, then you're insisting that both of these movies are supposed to be set within this brand new timeline that's supposed to happen after Days of Future Past happened. But that doesn't make any sense because the settings within Logan are supposed to be within the Patrick Stewart timeline. Patrick Stewart himself is in there, and he even had a conversation with Logan that fits within the timeline that both of them were in from the original X-Men trilogy. If you're curious and you would like to know where do the Deadpool movies fit within this universe, well, I think the excuse of the first Deadpool movie you could probably watch after you watch Days of Future Past, because that's where the whole timeline debacle actually gets pretty much weird, and they make fun of that. And with Deadpool 2, it makes a lot of sense to watch it after Logan, mostly because, spoiler alert, it addresses Logan's death in the film. But honestly, I think you should just watch both of the Deadpool movies after you watch all of the other X-Men films that are within chronological order, because they break the fourth wall and they just do their own thing while ignoring whatever the other X-Men films are doing. What did you guys think of this order? Do you like the way that I set this up, or did you not necessarily like it and think that there's a better way to watch all of these movies? Are there any more continuity errors that I miss and you feel like that I should have addressed within this video? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.